Hi there! Today we are gonna talk about factory method design pattern in React. So factory method design pattern is a way to simplify how objects are created. It allows us to write code that can create different objects without having to know exactly how those objects are built. This makes the code easier to maintain and extend. In the context of React and TypeScript, this pattern is helpful when rendering different components dynamically. Let's look at the pattern and see examples of both bad and good ways to handle object creation. But first, what is the factory method pattern? In simple terms, the factory method pattern first defines a general way to create objects like widgets in our examples. Second, this pattern lets specific piece of code decide exactly which objects to create. And third, it helps avoid repeating if or switch logic everywhere when you need new objects. So let's consider an example without using factory method. And here is this example where the creation of component is done directly inside the main logic. Let's imagine a dashboard application where different widgets like chart or table need to be displayed. And let's basically implement that. We'll create a chart widget and we'll use a function, and this is going to be chart widget. Right? Okay. Now let's create another widget, and we'll have a list widget. How it's very often developed without using factory method. So let's have an array defining which widgets should be used. We'll just have a simple array of widgets, charts, table, and list. And let's dynamically render these widgets in our dashboard component. So how do we do that? We'll make an array map with widgets, and yeah, as you can see, my intelligent GitHub Copilot suggests switch case, which actually dynamically renders the widgets. But let me close the map function correctly. Okay, so let me run this code. And let's see how it looks like. Okay, it works pretty well. But what's wrong with this approach? First, too much dependency. The dashboard component is directly tied to every widget type. Second, it's hard to add new widgets. If you need a new widget, you must change the dashboard code. And third, messy code. The switch statement can become bigger and harder to read as more widget types are added. So now let's consider example with factory method and how it can be used. This should make our code more cleaner and easier to extend. So how do we start? We should create a common interface for widgets, because all widgets will share the same basic structure. So let's delete our code from here and let's create this common interface. Interface widget, and it will have a render function inside of it. I think it will return, no, JSX element, right? Let's leave it for now. Okay. And second, let's create specific widgets. For example, let's create a chat widget by creating class chat widget, and it will implement our widget interface. Now let's create all the other widgets. Class table widget, and also we have class list widget. Right. Now let's create a factory interface. The factory interface defines a method to create widgets. So it looks like that: interface widget factory, and it will have a method called create widget, which will return obviously our widget interface. Now step 4, let's build a concrete factory. This factory decides which widget to create based on the input. So it will be named it will be a class, and actually my intelligent GitHub Copilot suggests me to create such a factory class. Concrete widget factory implements widget factory, and it basically has the logic to create different types of widgets based on the input type. And the last 5th step, instead of creating widgets directly, the factory does the work. So let's use it inside of our code. We will use widget factory, and we'll use our concrete widget factory. We'll have the instance of this, and now let's do the same code as we did with not the best practice. So we'll create a constant called widget types, and we'll have 3 types of widgets. And now let's render those by creating div and widget types. And as you can see, we used our concrete factory to create a widget based on the type, and we call our render function to basically render the widget. Let's see the result. The result is the same, but the code right now uses a factory method design pattern. But it looks like a bit of more code than we used with the previous approach. So why this is better? First, No dependency. The dashboard doesn't directly depend on any widget type. It doesn't have here concrete classes. Second, easy to add new widgets. To add a new widget in the factory, it's possible without changing the dashboard. Third, cleaner code. The logic for creating widget is centralized in this factory, concrete widget factory. So, the factory method design pattern helps separate objects creation from the main logic, making the code easier to extend and maintain. By using factory in our React application, you can dynamically create components while keeping your code clean and scalable. Try this approach in your next project to simplify your component creation.